you've seen what it takes to get there for Nick Chubb or Derrick Henry. It's like this dude's just an elite ball carrier where he can handle 20, 25 carries a game, always going to get the touchdowns. I mean, but that's what you need to bank on. And yeah, I think Gibson's a great pivot. I think that's one that probably, honestly, straight up, ask for more. But if it's in your inbox and it's like, Shane, that's all I will take is Dobbins for Gibson, you taking that?
Hey, it's Manic and Chill. So this is 3 out of the last 4 weeks. And also, if we keep changing the day we record, technically we can record every week. I just want you to know that, depending on when they drop these. So depending on when you're watching this, we actually did record 3 weeks in a row. But it's Addison Hayes' fault that it didn't come out 3 weeks in a row. All his fault. We definitely did it, though. I guess people will catch on, though, when we start talking about today's news, though. Damn it. Anyway, Manic and Chill. I'll be Manic this episode. We've got at Charles Chill FFB, Scott Connor over there. He'll be Chill. How you doing, Chill?
Another week, man. Another week. I'm ready for the frenzy that's going to happen here in the next 10 days. Once we get into free agency, it's probably going to start ramping up this weekend. But, yeah, I'm here for it. I have a lot of kind of reservations with what's going to happen. Everything we think we know and right now is going to probably be different in the next 2 weeks. But I'm here for it. That's why we play. That's why we like Dynasty, because it's just you can always find something to talk about. So hopefully you have some good topics. We did absolutely zero prep for this show other than a couple messages back and forth. So that makes the show pretty manic, but I think it's going to be a chill one. So I'm ready, man. How about you?
I did listen to every podcast talk about tagging day.
Yeah. Everyone decided to do a franchise tag podcast because why not? That's all there was to talk about, right?
And it changed so much. I mean, Dak Prescott signed with the Cowboys, so now he's a QB1, and before that he was a QB1. Okay, wait. Allen Robinson. Did you know he got tagged by Chicago? So he's going to have a bad quarterback situation. Oh, wait. Allen Robinson always has a bad quarterback situation. Chris Godwin. Oh, wait. Chris Godwin's in the same exact situation. Oh, wait. Nothing's changed. Literally nothing's changed.
I got some other ones. Some big news that dropped.
Cool.
The news was Chris Carson was given the news he was not going to be franchise tagged. So that means Rashad Penny go out and buy him, man. He's going to be the guy.
Buy him now.
And AJ Dillon, you have to buy him because Aaron Jones was not franchise tagged. So, I mean, just the reactions with these franchise tags, and it's just the franchise tags. But, I mean, John Brown got cut. So, I mean, Gabriel Davis, you have to go buy him. Now is the time to buy him. And Hunter Henry did not get franchise tagged, which means you better go pick up Donald Parham.
Well, I mean,
you better go pick him up because he's going to be on waivers in every league. Not in any of my leagues, but
Look, it's obvious, and it should go without saying that AJ Dillon. That's his name. AJ Dillon. He is now going to be the new Aaron Jones. It's 1-for-1 switch.
Could be.
I see no change whatsoever there. Donald Parham, he's obviously much more talented, or as talented as Hunter Henry. So definitely start buying these guys now, or 3 months ago when you should have bought them. So that's the only thing I found interesting about tagging day is these are all guys you should have been making moves on months ago. Like if you wanted to make a move on AJ Dillon, you should have done that 2 months ago. And what you actually should be doing right now, today, tomorrow, whenever you watch this, take a note, do it after this, hit pause, I don't care, just go trade AJ Dillon because his value will never be higher. And Aaron Jones is going to end up re-signing with the Packers, or even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter. AJ Dillon is not Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is special. I think people seem to, I don't understand. It's like they think 1 + 1 = 3. I mean, if you minus that 1, but add a different 1 to it, it's still going to be 3. It's not really like that. AJ Dillon's like 0.65 of Aaron Jones, maybe. He's big. He's very fast running forward. He's not agile. He's about as agile as me, and that's not good. And he is not the receiver that Aaron Jones is. So anyone that thinks that it's going to be a one-for-one swap, definitely trade AJ Dillon. I mean, if I owned him in any leagues where I didn't have co-owners and I was allowed to do things myself and not barred from making trades, AJ Dillon would be gone. But you might feel different. So how are you feeling about AJ Dillon? Because I know if you have AJ Dillon, you probably didn't invest a lot in him, right? You probably got him for a rookie second-round pick. So you might have different thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, we started the show out a little facetious, some sarcasm to start it off. But, truthfully, I think with AJ Dillon, there's still like maybe 10% of the market that thinks Aaron Jones could be back and aren't fully bought in. But yeah, the reason we kind of started off on this topic was you see whenever one of these moves happen, and a lot of times there are moves that you could have predicted were going to happen. You're just waiting for the actual news. Like it wasn't a shock that some of these guys are going to get cut. There's probably going to be, a dozen other guys that are on Dynasty rosters in the next week that get cut. And you're going to be like, oh, okay, well, probably could have foreseen that coming if I was looking at the salary cap situation or following beat reporters for teams. It's going to happen. And that doesn't just mean, you go out and just buy whoever was behind him. Now, there can be angles where you do that. But I think with AJ Dillon, I mean, here's the thing is he landed where he landed last year. He was behind already a top 15 Dynasty running back, maybe top 10, depending on where you had him with the rookies from last year. But Dillon lands there. And if you actually just put his profile side by side and forget some of the stuff that you might not like about him. He's too big to be a receiver. He wasn't a receiver in college, those knocks. And then, who can you find that's a comp to AJ Dillon? You always hear Derrick Henry, but you could also say he has a little maybe like Jordan Howard in him. He runs different than Jordan Howard, but it's not like he's guaranteed to be somebody that's just going to be this workhorse that is going to absolutely just mow people over. I mean, but he could have a Jordan Howard type career. If you look at Jordan Howard's first couple of years, they were pretty solid. I mean, and he actually averaged 25 catches a season in his first 2 years. I mean, not terrible. I think he had 49 catches in his first 2 years. So I mean, it's not terrible. It's not a zero in the passing game. And he was able to get, 250 plus carries in those years. So, I mean, he can be useful, but I guess I just look at AJ Dillon and say, if we're actually thinking just from a super flex perspective, because that's usually what we talk about. I mean, what was his price before the Aaron Jones non-franchise tag? Probably late first. I mean, do you have the ADP up? He was what, RB 25, 26, I think, somewhere in that range, maybe a little higher. And so, I mean, how high can you really go? I comped him on my podcast a couple weeks ago, and I think this might be selling him a little short, but we might even mention it on here that, maybe he has a little bit of like a Ronald Jones type fantasy impact to where I think he can get more carries than Ronald Jones, but I wouldn't be shocked if he has a, 225, 230 carry with 20 catches. So really what I think AJ Dillon's ceiling, how he gets to have a ceiling, how he becomes an RB1 in a given season is going to be touchdowns, right? Like that's one of the narratives that you hear. Well, Aaron Jones had, 15 plus touchdown season. So if AJ Dillon gets just 12 touchdowns, then he could get there. You could see him have a year where he gets, 1,050 yards, 12 touchdowns, and he throws in, 20 catches. That's going to get him close to RB1 numbers, but it's probably not a great bet. If you can swap him out for what would be your line in Superflex right now? I mean, would you pretty clearly, I think most people would take the players, but probably the picks you have to pick these players at. So you would probably take Najee Harris and Travis Etienne over AJ Dillon right now?
All day, every day.
And the picks, you probably have to secure those guys, I would say top 6, most likely.
106, 107 range, yeah.
Yeah, to assure yourself. Now, if you said, I have to get Travis Etienne, well, maybe you want to get the 104 or 105 because there might be somebody else that takes him. So I think to actually secure one of those running backs, because that's the thing. If you sell AJ Dillon for, let's say you sell him for the 109 and you just map it out and you say, okay, I think 4 quarterbacks are going to go before this pick. I think Chase is going to go, maybe another receiver, maybe Kyle Pitts. maybe ETN and Harris. So I'm sitting here at the 109, and I'm maybe picking between, Kyle Pitts, Devontae Smith, Bateman, Javonte Williams. Like, I'm going to get my choice probably of one of those guys just in a regular PPR, even if it's tight end premium. Pitts might still be there at the 107, 108. It just depends. But I think the risk is, like, you may not get Javonte Williams there. You know what I mean? 3 running backs may be off the board. So now you trade AJ Dillon away for a receiver. So in that regard, I can see where maybe you don't want to trade him for the 109 or the 110 if you're targeting a running back. But, I think if it's a top 6 pick, it's a smash. I think if it's a top 8 pick, I will still take my chances, because if Javonte Williams goes before 108, guess what? I'm probably getting Zach Wilson or Trey Lance. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the quarterback value in this class, in lieu of taking running back 3 off the board or wide receiver 2. So I think it's probably, what would you say? Would you smash for the 108?
108? Yeah.
108, yep.
I'm guessing not at least, all 4 quarterbacks go in the top 8.
Yep.
Because
and ETN and Najee and probably Chase. So you're getting your choice of wide receiver 2, Pitts, or basically those 2 guys are probably going to be the next up, but that's not terrible, especially if you're in a heavier tight end premium. Pitts is going to go too. So, I mean, do the math, right? So say you're just in a super flex tight end premium, not any hyper premium, not 2 tight end, not point per carry, pretty stock with a 1.5 PPR. What's your drawing line? 109 to 112. What's the range where you say, I'm going to think about a Dillon offer?
Where am I getting Pat Fryer with? Probably 112. Right?
112.
Tight end premium. 1.5 is not super, but whatever. It's still tight end premium. 112.
Okay. And I think that was probably around what you would have had to pay before the Aaron Jones news. That was probably around the range, like a really late first.
Yeah, I'm going to be, and I know I'll be lower on him than the community. Although the community had a fun day of hating him, and then other people running to his defense today.
Yep.
It's a couple things, though. I mean, yeah. The Aaron Jones, can he be a top 24 running back? Yes. Jordan Howard's a great comp. Jordan Howard had a really good career. I know we don't want to think that because, his last few years were bad, but for a running back to give you 2 top 15 seasons in their career is not bad at all. And if AJ Dillon could do that, that would be awesome. Now, based on the expectations of what the community thinks, I don't think he'd be looked at as a success. But again, I mean, you're looking at Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones was wildly efficient on his touches, and he was wildly efficient scoring touchdowns, and he was wildly efficient scoring distance touchdowns. I don't know that we can expect AJ Dillon to do these things. So AJ Dillon could go out there and run for 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns, and it'll look like a disappointment. And 20 receptions, when it's probably not a bad year. It's probably RB 16, 17, which isn't bad. But I just think based on the expectations that the community is going to expect him to just be a slam dunk top 12 back. And I don't know that that's what he is. We were being facetious. I don't think he's a bad player. I just don't think he's special. And Aaron Jones is special. And when people comp him to Derrick Henry, I get a little annoyed because Derrick Henry is, I hate this term. He's like a once in a generation type of player, though. There aren't guys that are his size that run like he does, that play like he does. You can compare like Andre Williams from BC a few years ago, but we saw that didn't turn out. Way back when there was the big guy for the Giants, and I can't remember his Brandon Jacobs. Big, fast. Didn't mean you're going to be Derrick Henry, though. Derrick Henry, there's never really been a guy that his size, his speed, that's actually put it together in the NFL. Not in the last 20 years. Maybe before that, I don't know. I didn't watch. I'm 40 now. Yeah, I don't remember football in my 20s. It was hard living.
Any other thoughts?
No, I just I'm all on the sell train. Because I think you're going to be able to get him high. If you're going to be looking to buy anyone out of this, any of the tagging stuff, AJ Dillon. Aaron Jones. Again, he's to me, he's the same guy no matter where he goes. He's 26, the age cliff for the running back. I did some work on that, looked at it. But again, we don't know if that was because the classes have been so bad, the players were so bad, and now that they're better, maybe they can last a little longer. And he's a guy that I'll take that chance on because of his receiving attributes.
Well, some interesting numbers. If you're just trying to do the math, if you look at, so I calculated out the last dozen years, what does it take to be an RB1? And it's right around like 217 PPR points. So that's just the rolling average of what it's been the last 12 years. So, if you just do the math on trying to get there, if AJ Dillon can have, let's just put him at 1,100 yards. That's probably a decent outcome for him, 1,100 yards. That's 110 points right there. Let's just give him conservatively 20 catches. That's another 20 points, right? And let's give him conservatively 150 yards on those 20 catches. So real quickly, you're getting, 1,100 yards, 20 catches, and then you're getting 150 receiving yards. So pretty quickly right there, you're at, 145 PPR points? And he's trying to get to around, let's just say 220. So he's still got to make up another 85 points or so on touchdowns. So if you're getting 6 points per touchdown, 85, he's still, just with those numbers, let's just say he has a 225 for 1,100 and 20 catches for 150 yards. He's got to score 15 touchdowns to get there. That's what he's got to get to be an RB1. And that's just to hit the rolling average from the last 12 years. Now, that doesn't count fumbles. So that's going to take away a couple points if you just look at the sheer numbers. So, I do think, and maybe that's a conservative line. It's interesting. Everyone talks about Derrick Henry because Matt LaFleur had Derrick Henry in 2018, if you remember, and he gave Dion Lewis 200 touches. And it wasn't until the year after when Derrick Henry basically got all the work for the Titans. The last 2 years is what's driven his value to where it is. So, in history with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, and maybe it's not Jamal Williams. Everyone says, they're going to sign him back. And it's like, well, in this market, they may bring him back because they like him and they're familiar with him, but there's a lot of guys that they can maybe bring in and do the exact same thing as Jamal Williams for the same price. Maybe they get a better player. Maybe they bring in somebody like, James White or Kenyon Drake or something like that. And then you're looking at AJ Dillon and saying, okay, if I can't factor him in for 250 plus touches, he's going to have a hard time getting there. So that's the only thing. Is it great if he has an RB12 season? So here's the other thing. Even if he has an RB12 season, if you actually look at what makes a difference, it's usually you got to be top 6 or 7 running backs to be a league winner. RB12 is great, but RB12 and RB17, negligible. From a week-to-week standpoint, you're talking about maybe 0.6 points per week difference or something like that. It's not a big gap. If you look this year at the distribution, you're talking about from RB10 all the way down to RB27. It's maybe 1.5 a game, 2 point. It's not winning your league, right? What's winning your league is Dalvin Cook or McCaffrey or Aaron Jones when he has 60 catches and 15 touchdowns and still gets, 240 carries. That's what's winning your league. So I don't know. I just think the range of outcomes for him are probably not as high as we want him to be. And maybe we look back next year and, AJ Dillon gets, 38 goal line carries and he ends up scoring 21 touchdowns. And it's he's the new monster in the NFL where he just is 6 after 6 after 6. And then what can you do? But yeah. I don't want to bet on that. I don't think you do either.
You brought up the Matt LaFleur point. So I just, while you're doing that, went back to Derrick Henry. He had 215 carries when LaFleur was there. Then you look at Aaron Jones, 236, 201 last year when he was injured and missed a couple games. So we'll say he probably would have hit 230 again. He's going to share that backfield. He's shown that. They're obviously going to bring somebody in, whether it's Jamal Williams or someone better. And if it's James White, well, then RIP to AJ Dillon. He'll never see a pass. And James White is actually half decent in the red zone too.
I think you hope it's Jamal Williams. I think you hope it's Jamal Williams, and it's not insert name of cheap running back on the market. You hope it's not Leonard Fournette or James Conner or Kenyon Drake or someone that comes in and it's man, this guy signed a 1-year, $4 million deal with the Packers, and the Packers are going to go with the 1-2 punch, and it's like, okay, that's great for the Packers, but not to buy AJ Dillon for, a top 10 superflex pick in this year's class. So there's just still some risk that I don't think is being accounted for. So I think that's where I am too. I have one. So here's the one caveat. If you are in a point per carry league, and I've said this in my Patreon chat, I've said it anywhere. If you are in a point per carry league, I move the needle a little higher, right? Because, even Jordan Howard posted like an RB top 9 season in point per carry just because the dude's getting 19 carries a week. I mean, in point per carry, that's an extra like 4 points just because he's touching the ball. That don't even factor in yardage or touchdowns or anything. So I am willing to buy him. If you're in a 0.25 or 0.2 point per carry league, I'm actually willing to send a 109, 110, 111, 112 because, the receivers don't really move the needle in that format. But PPR, where you're talking about pass catching and you're looking for that ceiling, I'm with you. I'm a sell.
So one other piece of news that I didn't see it until I went on the Roto World or Edge, whatever the hell they're called now. They know what they're called.
I don't even see the feeds. I have to see someone on Twitter share them because I apparently don't know what they're called. NBC Edge, right?
NBC Sports Edge. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's a long name. I liked Roto World better. It was more pithy, which meant, kind of matched their blurbs. But whatever. Gus Edwards was tendered by the Ravens. This might seem like a small move, but I guess people in Dynasty, I think, would know that this is going to have a pretty huge impact on J.K. Dobbins. You wanted Gus Edwards to go away. I mean, as simple as that. Because the guy is madly efficient. They love him there. Apparently, they're never going to let him go. He was a undrafted free agent. And then they tendered him as a ERFA 2 years ago, and then tendered him again. And now they just refuse to let this guy go. He will never hit the open market. But yeah, so long story short, if you were hoping that J.K. Dobbins was going to be a 20, 25 carry guy, I don't think so. Looks like Gus Edwards will be still in that backfield, and he will still be taking touches from J.K. Dobbins, and that breaks my heart.
Well, I guess my pushback to you would be what were you expecting? I mean, I think it was fairly certain that the Ravens were going to bring back Gus Edwards, and if it wasn't Gus Edwards, it would have been somebody else. I mean, I know we kind of started talking about this before we started recording. We just talked about a guy like AJ Dillon that is going to have to live on trying to get touchdowns if he wants to get there, right? I mean, I love J.K. Dobbins. He's priced where is he at right now in ADP? I mean, I know he's in the top 20. I know he's in the top 10, but what's the ceiling for Dobbins? We could break down the same numbers for Dobbins as we could AJ Dillon and wonder, how's he going to get there? How's he going to have a top 12 season? What's it going to take?
So here's the thing. He's 16 overall in the last ADP on DLF, RB10.
RB10, okay.
I love Dobbins. I'm not touching him there now because he's a guy that I needed, or at least I thought had top 4 running back. I mean, if you want to be honest, coming out of the draft last year, I thought he's a guy that has RB1 upside, legitimate the RB1 upside. So I was actually very disappointed that they tendered Gus Edwards. I didn't see that happening. They had to tender him at a second-round value. So he's definitely not going anywhere. There's no hope of that. Yeah, I thought maybe they'd bring someone in, or maybe they would just do a 1-2 punch with, J.K. Dobbins. They liked what they saw last year, and maybe Justice Hill. But I guess Justice Hill is so bad that he can't even crack that rotation. So that's another thing is if you got Justice Hill shares, it might be time to give up on those as much as that hurts my heart. Yeah, if Dobbins isn't going to score 12 to 15 touchdowns, he's not going to be a high-end one. He's just not. Every running back shares the backfield to a certain extent. It's just you don't want them sharing a backfield with a guy that's already been in the system and has already shown that he's really efficient and really pretty decent in that. So that kind of hurts me. Maybe I had my J.K. Dobbins colored glasses on and was envisioning Gus Edwards moving on, but this definitely moves Dobbins' value down for me.
Well, and one of the one of the misnomers about the Ravens is, they don't target the running backs. Now, we look at the numbers and say they don't target the running backs. They don't target a lot of guys because they don't throw the ball a lot. So, man, that's the thing. You look at, and I've argued this night and day on different places about, I'm not even going to get into it on this show because I'll just get angry. But it's the narrative about, well, Lamar Jackson's not a great passer because he doesn't pass a lot. So clearly, if they don't let him pass a lot, that must mean he's good. He's not very good at passing. I mean, maybe that's true. Yeah. I mean, if you don't ever let the guy throw it more than 400 times in a season, I think it barely topped 400 passes last year. And then 2 years ago, and then last year it was 376. And obviously he missed a little time. So he's probably right around in that same range. But, you look at Dobbins and, you don't necessarily see that he's going to be a guy that does zero in the passing game. But, even so, if you just take, what his numbers were last year, I think he had, 20 catches or something like that last year. I mean, it wasn't enough to really be, it wasn't enough to move the needle, I guess would be my point. And they don't throw the ball enough. So even if he got targeted at a rate that was comparable, and there's other guys that don't get targeted at a rate any higher than him, but their offenses throw the ball 610 times. So of course they're going to just get more sheer targets. I bet you, I have to look it up, but I bet you like Joe Mixon's target rate and Dobbins wasn't that different. But it's like the Bengals were throwing the ball 41 times a game. So it's not that hard for him to get 6 targets a game or 5 targets a game just because it's still a 15%, of the target share for the game. But it's a lot easier to get, 6 out of 40 than it is to get 6 out of 22 or something like that. So I think that's the downfall with Dobbins is not only is he splitting the backfield, not only is he not going to be guaranteed to get a shot to probably score, what would you say his touchdown ceiling is? 12? Maybe? I mean, Gus is going to take some. Lamar is going to take some.
10.
So, okay, 10.
10.
10, and you just take, last year he had a 5.3% target rate. So basically, if you just take 5% of the targets for Baltimore going to him, if they throw it, and this is per snap. So, I mean, this is going to be dependent on some other guys. But, I mean, maybe he gets to 35 targets or something like that. I mean, that would probably put him up more like in the 7 to 8% range. So even if he takes on a little bit more, because Ingram's going to be gone, maybe you hope they throw it a little bit more and they concentrate some more targets to Dobbins. But, if you tell me he's going to get 40 targets, that's going to translate to maybe 30, 33 catches or something like that. He's not getting there. He's just not. The same math we did with AJ Dillon. I'm almost talking myself into saying there might be a higher shot that Dillon is a difference maker than Dobbins.
I think, and this is going to hurt, Dillon's touchdown upside is higher than Dobbins.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Aaron Rodgers isn't going to run for 10 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to run nearly as much as Lamar Jackson, partly because he's 3 times his age. Yep. Also because it's probably best that your quarterback not get murdered down in the red zone. Yeah, he only had 18 receptions last year, Dobbins, 24 targets. It's not like he's going to see 70 targets. And, even when Ingram smashed in 2019, it wasn't that he saw a lot of targets or had a lot of receptions. It's that he had a lot of touchdown catches, which is just, that doesn't happen. I think he scored something like 6 receiving touchdowns on 30 targets, something ridiculous. Unless Dobbins can do that, I'm not feeling great about Dobbins heading into next year, and it breaks my heart because I love the guy.
And here's something depressing. The 2 names that are right by Dobbins in the target percentage or the target rate stat for last year, Phillip Lindsay, which we know Denver doesn't throw to him, and right below Dobbins was a stud receiver named Sony Michelle. So that that's the range of how often he's getting targeted compared to those other guys. Now, that would be fine if you were in an offense that threw it 600 times. You could be okay with a 5% target rate as long as you were the guy getting a lot of the carries. Fine. But now you're talking about one of the 2 or 3 lowest passing attempt teams with a 5% target rate, and the math just doesn't add up. So I'm not saying sell Dobbins for AJ Dillon plus, but now that we've kind of talked through it, it's almost like that might not be a terrible move depending on what the plus is. But I'm almost kind of looking at Dobbins and saying the same thing. If you could, let me ask you this. Dobbins for Travis Etienne right now.
Man, I've talked
That's a tough one, isn't it?
I've talked myself into Etienne, and it's unfair because I just did a write-up on Etienne a couple weeks ago for DLA.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously looking at highlight tapes and some tape, it's always going to skew you a little bit if you're human. If you're a computer, maybe not. But so I'm definitely like on a holy crap, Etienne is good kick. But yeah, I think I'm going to take Etienne. And that's even without knowing where he's going to land. Because he's a guy that I know, even if he only sees 4 targets a game, there's a 40% chance on every one of those targets that he could score a touchdown because he's that fast and he's that elusive. Whereas, and again, I love J.K. Dobbins, but that's not who he is. He's a good receiver. He's just not that guy. Yeah, give me Etienne.
Yeah, and it's interesting because right below Sony Michelle in target rate was Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry. And they've never been known for being guys that get targeted. So even though Dobbins is capable, and that's the craziest thing, is we know he's probably more capable than the offense is going to show. So even if he bumps up the numbers a little bit, it's just not a great situation. I mean, I was surprised because I was looking at this as we were talking. Joe Mixon actually was in the top 30 in target rate, 9%. Now, he had a couple games where he had like 6-8 targets, which is going to push that up. And he only played 6 games. So is 9% what it's going to be for the whole season? Nah, maybe not. But there's some guys up there. Miles Sanders, 8.6. Joe Mixon, 9. Those guys are interesting because I think you could easily pivot off Dobbins for one of those guys and get at least a mid-second or more on top. I mean, and that's kind of tempting. Shane has a look in his eyes like he's thinking about something.
So I love Miles Sanders, and I love any running back with that profile that's a really good receiver, really fast, that doesn't just depend on carries, and is seemingly going to be in an offense where he doesn't need to just depend on carries, that they will use him in the passing attack. We're taking a small leap with Nick Sirianni, because he was the offensive coordinator, but he didn't call plays, whatever. I'm extrapolating. I'm assuming he's going to throw the ball a little bit to the running back at least. Yeah, if I could sell Dobbins and get Sanders in a pick back, I'll do it. I'd want a second, but I would just need a third to nudge me, just to push me over, just make me feel good about myself. I would do it.
Well, and obviously, if you pivot down to Miles Sanders, you're losing about 1.5 years, almost 2 years in terms of age. So you're pushing it forward 1 year on the rookie contract. If you trade it for someone like Mixon, he's going to be 25, so he's getting in that territory where it's like maybe 1 or 2 more years left, and then it's like he's on the cliff. He's done at that point. So
interesting guy, Antonio Gibson.
I was just going to say, if you want. I think that's the target. I think Swift is too hard to get. You're going to have to pay more on top of Dobbins to get Swift. But I think Gibson is in the same range where, I'm looking at the profile for Gibson and actually, almost 11% target rate. And I think that if you're looking for a floor, I think he's definitely the play over Dobbins. But I actually kind of like the Washington situation. If you look at their pace of play the last couple of years, it's actually been fairly positive under Ron Rivera. Like they move the ball. They're not going to get stuck with a low volume offense like Dobbins would be in Baltimore. So you're probably going to end up with just a sheer 20% more offensive plays almost, or at least passing plays in Washington, which even if Gibson doesn't get it. And the thing about Dobbins is you already mentioned Gus Edwards. So it's not like we can pencil Dobbins in for, 240 carries. He's not even going to get that. So I'm looking at Gibson and saying if he can just get 200 carries and 50 catches, he has a much easier path to getting there than Dobbins. Or, you've seen what it takes to get there for Nick Chubb or Derrick Henry. It's like this dude's just an elite ball carrier where he can handle 20, 25 carries a game, always going to get the touchdowns. I mean, but that's what you need to bank on. And, yeah, I think Gibson's a great pivot. I think that's one that probably, honestly, straight up, ask for more, but If it's in your inbox and it's like, Shane, that's all I will take is Dobbins for Gibson, you taking that?
I am.
And that hurts you, doesn't it? Because you were on the JK train all
Love
year
JK.
last year.
Landing spot, I can't think of the word, but if it weren't for landing spot, J.K. Dobbins is the best running back out of the class last year.
But we thought Baltimore was the guru landing spot. Like, Lamar's going to open up the offense, and he's going to score 20 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Those wide open lanes, he's going to get 6.5 yards a carry. What happened?
And I go back to Mark Ingram. We looked at Mark Ingram, and we're like, well, he could do it. And I'm just looking at it. He had 26 receptions in 2019. And 5 of them were touchdowns. Like that's an absurd rate. It's just I can't see that happening for Dobbins. Look, I'd love, and I thought coming into last season that with them drafting Devin Duvernay, that just showed like, okay, we're gonna keep trying to get receivers for this team, right? Even if it's not a first round guy, but we gave him Miles Boykin and Marquise Brown the year before that. This year we're giving him Duvernay because Miles Boykin's terrible. So we're just going to keep giving him receiving weapons because we're going to let him throw. That's what I hoped would happen, right? I hoped it was going to be a more high-paced offense. Doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen. I mean, you can only bang your head into the wall so many times before you realize the wall's not going to move, right?
Yep. Well, listen, I think that I've been advocating buying Lamar Jackson because I do think there is going to be some uptick in volume for the Ravens. It has to. I don't think they can win the way that they're playing right now because it's not like Lamar's efficient enough to just dominate on, what they're scoring at this point. So I think there's going to be some higher volume years, but we're not talking, 550 attempts. You're hoping he gets up in the high 400s, maybe 500 at the most. If he gets there, I mean, Lamar can be great. They can probably support, a top 6 tight end. They can probably support a top 24 receiver with that volume, and they might be able to hit a top 12 running back. But we just did the math. We went through the math on Dillon, kind of went through the math on Dobbins. I just think it's going to be hard to get there. So if you can, there's a lot of pivot options compared to what Dobbins' value is. One other guy I wanted to bring up, not Gibson, because I think Gibson is what we talked about. I think he's an easy pivot. But I was just looking at these same numbers. I mean, Cam Akers, low target rate. Rams didn't target Cam Akers. They targeted the other running back. So he did get pulled off the field a lot in passing situations. Now, one of the narratives I'm seeing on Cam Akers is he's a bell cow. He's going to get 90% of the carries, which if you told me Dobbins was going to get 90% of the carries, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Are you a little worried that maybe we're just assuming that it's going to be Akers for 22 touches a game and it's going to be 90%? That's a little aggressive. Even though they did that towards the end of the year, I almost look like maybe he's a little riskier in terms of where his value is right now too. Like, what is he? He's ahead of Dobbins, isn't he? Isn't he RB7?
Yeah.
RB8?
Yeah, he's up there.
So are you a little worried about him too, or do you think it's different?
See, I'm less worried about him because of Sean McVay's history, and Cam Akers is RB8. Yeah, and Dobbins is 10. So they're right around each other, a few picks behind each other. But anyway, I've seen McVay commit to a running back before. I've seen that he'll use Todd Gurley for 250 carries and 70 targets, which I think Akers is comparable talent-wise. And I think they showed last year that that's what they wanted to do, is make him the focal point as the year went on. That said, Daryl Henderson's not bad. So there are going to be weeks where, if he's running well, I can imagine that, they're just like, you know what, we're just going to give him 15 carries this week, and Akers is only going to get 13 touches. I don't think it'll happen often, but this kills me. I feel better about Akers' situation right now than I do Dobbins.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's probably a little more to bite off with Akers than what we saw last year. And, does that mean he's going to be a 60-catch guy like Todd Gurley was? Probably not. But, I think that's probably has a chance to be an offense that looks a little different with Stafford, more efficient with Stafford. So maybe more efficiency means better opportunities in the passing game for the running backs. I mean, we don't know. We don't know until we see because they have a new quarterback. And they're probably going to run the offense a little bit different. We'll see.
I think we can assume with Goff being gone, it's a better offense. I think.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll make that assumption.
Yeah, and
And
Dan Stafford has been historically a pretty efficient quarterback, so he should elevate
right.
If you just assume that the Rams' volume is going to be similar to what it's been for the last 4 years, you can probably assume they're going to be in the top 10 in the league in attempts, and then you add on top of that the uptick in efficiency from Stafford. I think it's just going to improve everybody. I mean, I don't know how much you can improve on top 12 seasons with guys like Kupp and Robert Woods, but I think it could be an uptick for Akers. It could be an uptick for Tyler Higbee. Could be an uptick for literally, I don't know if you saw today, but the Rams ended up with 3 comp picks in the top, I think 120 picks or 100 in, they got a couple comp picks at the end of the third round, which, I mean, I'm actually interested in, because where the Rams are with their cap situation, I'm literally interested in any Ram that they draft in the first like 4 or 5 rounds, or guys like Bryson Hopkins, Van Jefferson, basically anybody that's going to has some sort of investment. They're probably going to make the team, and they may have a role, and that could be an offense you want to target because it's efficient. So I'm kind of buying back in on some of the peripheral Rams weapons, and I hope I can single-handedly maybe move the needle for Van Jefferson a little bit to get some hype so I can sell all those shares that I really don't like. But I can see like people starting to buy back in as we get closer to the season on, if they draft another tight end or if they draft another receiver or whatever. Like there's going to be a depth chart there with some opportunity left, and I can see people buying into that offense a little bit more. So just something to mention there. You want to hit on some receivers real quick from the franchise tag fallout? Or you want to go somewhere different? Because I mean, if you listen to a bunch of other podcasts, you probably already heard that.
I already know all that stuff. So you were just talking about compensation picks, though, and Edge / Roto World / whatever the hell they're called had a fun little stat on there. Do you know that the Jaguars haven't earned a compensation pick in 11 seasons? Not one. It means their players suck. It means the players that leave their team, sign elsewhere, are terrible. It's just, how bad is your franchise when you can't even get a comp pick for guys? I mean, these are like there's teams that I think the Eagles got 2 6-rounders this year. Like you're getting bottom of the barrel most of the time. Although the Rams getting a couple thirds is that's really good.
Well, I mean, and they have traded away some players too before they would leave in free agency as well. But I mean, yeah, that is a system where you sit there and you go, the Rams are screwed. They traded away all their picks for the future, but being able to add 3 top 130 picks or whatever, I mean, that can get you some depth and even if it's not fantasy relevant, I listened to the maybe it was the Ringer or the Athletic, one of those shows. They did a cap breakdown on the Rams, and literally they had like 140 million that's going to be tied up in 7 players. And so you just do the math. They have 45 million, including all of their rookies, to fit basically 46 other players on their 53-man roster. And that doesn't even count some of the other expenses that you have. So, I mean, you're talking less than $1 million per player. So, I mean, I'm interested in anybody that they get that's on a rookie contract, because there's a really good shot if they draft you in the 5th round, they're drafting you to be on the field. They're not going to be a guy they put on the practice squad. They're going to draft guys that they can see within having a role. And then another thing I wanted to bring up is did you hear about that veteran exception that they have in the new CBA? Did we talk about that?
Me and you did in one of the patron chats. I don't remember.
Yeah, we did. That they these teams can basically write off like $1.5 million of the salary cap for a player that they keep. So it's incentivizing teams to keep these veteran players that they don't franchise tag or they don't give tenders to. You can bring them back, and they incentivize teams to basically re-sign their own players. So as long as you drafted a guy and kept him for 4 years and now he's a free agent and you're not tendering him, or you're letting him hit the market basically. But I think this year you may see this a little bit more. You may see guys that are hitting the market and say it's a reduced cap. The names that came to mind for me were like Wayne Gallman. Like he's going to hit the market. What's his market going to be? Like 1 year, 3-4 million at most, probably. And if I'm a guy like that, I'm probably incentivized to sign a deal where I'm going to maybe get used and hit free agency again when the cap is higher. I don't want to be tied for 2 or 3 years if I'm a receiver or a tight end especially, but even a running back. Like I don't want to tie myself for 3 or 4 years on a low dollar deal because the market adjustment's been down because of the low cap. I want a 1-year deal. I think we're going to see a lot of 1-year deals. Prove it, hit free agency next year when the cap goes up another $25 million. But the key with this deal is if you bring your guy back, I can sign you for a 1-year, $4 million deal, but I can then write off $1.5 million of that. So, I can actually offer a player $1 million more than another team, and I'm paying less in my cap hit. So you may see some of these guys that we hoped would hit free agency, like Keelan Cole or Tim Patrick or Josh Reynolds. Like I could see the Rams bringing back Josh Reynolds, and you're going, man, Van Jefferson was just about to happen. They re-signed Josh Reynolds, 1 year, $3.5 million deal, and it only counts $2 million against the cap. I think the Rams might do that.
Yeah, I mean, but you're going to have to get creative to get under the cap. So deals like that would make sense. Deals like Nelson Aguilar, the one he signed last year, the veteran benefit deal, where you signed for $1.1 million, but only 800,000 counts towards the cap. Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of those deals too. And like you said, if I'm a free agent, I'd rather sign a 1-year deal too. It makes no sense to sign a long-term contract this year. No, I'm not going to get a lot of upfront money, relatively speaking, with the cap at $182 million. It's actually a little lower than we even thought it was going to be after they built our hopes up to 185. So yeah, no, I'm very interested to see who actually utilizes that, and I have a feeling it'll be the teams that usually are creative or have cap issues. Teams like the Saints, teams like the Eagles, the Rams. These are all teams that apparently don't respect the cap and have ways to work around the cap, and using creative methods like that is something that these teams will probably do.
Yeah, that should be interesting to see if a lot of these players kind of test free agency and then realize that the market really wasn't there for them. And then, they go back to their team and say, hey, the best offer I got was, $4.5 million. You want me back for basically, you want me back for $3.5 million, and you can get the cap break, and you pay me a little bit more. I'll come back and play for 1 year and go from there. So that should be fun.
And we just saw that if anyone paid attention to baseball free agency. Very similar thing happened. There were guys getting released, good players, because they were on $15 million contracts. And the teams are just like, no. There's guys getting signed to minor league contracts that in any other year would have gotten signed to a major league deal. But teams are trying to save money because they want you to think that, these billionaire owners lost money during COVID. Whatever. The whole market's acting like it's real. So, yeah, that's how the market's going to act. They lowered the cap. It is what it is. As much as I don't believe the cap is a real thing, I know it exists, but I don't know that it's real. It does limit what you can actually spend in one given year. Yep.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention this because I saw you did this trade. Just kind of wanted to walk through your thought process on it because I thought it was a good deal for you. I want to talk about your Laviska Shenault for Aaron Jones deal that you did. How did that come about? Was that just like popped in your inbox and you're like, I like it. It's a good running back that I wanted to buy anyway that may go and I mean, what are you hoping with Aaron Jones? That he gets like one mega season of like they sign him to big money and he gets a bunch of touches and it's like this could be his ultimate year? Is that kind of what you're hoping for? Or?
I can see 2 more seasons out of him. Top.
That's fair. I don't think you're signing him for 1 year. I mean, you're hoping it's going to be longer for sure.
And Laviska Shenault, as fun as he is, is he a wide receiver 1? Or is he just one of those guys? Those guys between wide receiver 14 and 30.
I like him. I have a ton of Shenault, and I actually am starting to struggle to see how he's even a wide receiver 2, just because I think there's a pretty decent chance that the Jaguars bring in another receiver, and even if it's not a receiver that's better than Shenault, if they were just, let's say they bring back Keelan Cole, they still have Colin Johnson, and then they sign. Let's just say they sign somebody out there that is somewhat intriguing. I'm trying to think of a name. Maybe they sign like a Marvin Jones or someone like that. Who knows? But I mean, if they just bring in one other guy, I'm kind of struggling to see how Shenault gets there as a top 24 receiver. He's good. Don't get me wrong, he's good.
Right.
But, if you just kind of look at the way he's going to have to get there, it's probably not that bad of a deal to trade for him. If you can just get, you're taking the short term, I want the points now with him. You'd say in 2 years, you may say, well, man, I wish I could cash Aaron Jones out at 28 years old for a decent receiver, but you've committed to, this gets into what we've talked about before. Like, you're probably taking the long-term, quote unquote, long-term point loss here. But, let's say Chenault has, 1,000 points in the next 6 seasons. That's really not enough to ever move the needle in your lineup. Even if he averages 11 or 12 a game for 6 years, that's not winning you. You can replace 11 to 12 a game with Cole Beasley.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones, if he scores, if he's a top 8, top 10 running back, which we've seen, he's done it twice, man. Yeah, I like the move. I think that's one of those process moves where on paper people would probably take Chenault over Aaron Jones, like in some circumstances, because they think they're getting a safer, longer term asset. But you took the wins above replacement move right there, and you basically sold out for the points. And I love the deal. That's the kind of deal you should be doing if you want to buy running backs.
Yeah.
That type of deal. And even if you love the receiver, you're not losing a position that is moving the needle in terms of whether Laviska Shenault as your second flex in a start 3 receiver league is not determining whether you win or lose. It's probably your quarterbacks, your running backs, or maybe your tight ends that are determining it, or your elite receivers if you have a couple of those, but not the flex receivers. So I love the deal. Great deal.
Yeah. Shenault shouldn't be one of your top 4 receivers. If he is, then your team's not doing really well. And or you're really young maybe, and you got a bunch of picks, so good for you. But yeah, just like you said, he's not a guy that's going to ever matter enough where this trade's ever going to haunt me. It's not like I can see Shenault putting up consecutive wide receiver 1 seasons where in 3 years I go, really should have held on to him there. I understand from the other owner's perspective too, though, it's that cash out, and it's on that running back because we know how the market gets at 26 on those guys, especially free agency. We just know Dynasty community is pretty smart, and it knows running backs over the last 4 or 5 years have died at the age of 26. So it's better. Is it better to get something now or hold on a little longer and end up even getting less? Although in my eyes, I don't know that you could do less than what Shenault, and that makes it sound like I don't like Shenault. So I'll not say it like that. But yeah, no, I understood why he did it. But
this is the game theory strategy of Dynasty, to where if you have, just look at your running back portfolio right now. If you are sitting on guys like Aaron Jones, now he's the premier one because even though he's a little older and he's hitting free agency, he's been the one that's hitting free agency that has produced at a difference-making level before. But if you're sitting on some of these other running backs that you're not really sure what to do, if you're sitting on Chris Carson or Melvin Gordon, David Johnson, James Conner, now most of those guys have already hit that value peak to where you have them, and what they could be worth to you is less than what you're going to get. But I look at, between the two of us, we have over 100 teams, which is disgustingly sad, but everyone knows it's true. But I go through and look at some of my teams, and I'm like, oh, Melvin Gordon. Like, okay, what do I want to do with Melvin Gordon? So I can put out in the, in my group me chat or whatever and say, I'm looking to trade Melvin Gordon, but I'm going to get a bunch of offers. That's going to be like, okay, well, I'll give you like James Washington or something like that. Like that's the kind of offer you're getting. And if all I want to get is a younger piece, I get that. That's probably about what he's worth, like a late second, early third at the best right now on the open market. But it's not moving the needle. So resist that temptation to trade Aaron Jones or Joe Mixon or Derrick Henry or these guys that are hitting that cliff, where the cliff on Derrick Henry could come in the middle of 2021 and he's gone. All it takes is one injury for him. It could cost him the season and he's never able to replicate what he did before. It could happen like that. But to panic and say, well, I'm going to trade Derrick Henry for, just throw out a name, like I'll trade Derrick Henry for Terry McLaurin.
Michael Gallup.
Michael Gallup's a little lower. But let's just say, and Terry McLaurin, I think, is right on the fringe. But let's just say a receiver that is kind of right in that range, maybe a little bit lower. But it's like I don't see a path where Terry McLaurin is a top 8, top 10 receiver. He's not going to get there. He's good. He's really good. But don't trade like Derrick Henry for Cortland Sutton. That kind of deal. Because, okay, Cortland Sutton can be great. You might be able to tell yourself this story that he becomes an alpha dominant receiver. The odds are against it. The odds are if someone's going to win you your league, just from a replaceability standpoint, it's Derrick Henry. There's probably a bunch of Cortland Sutton range guys I can go buy. So just from that standpoint, wouldn't you say resist that temptation to just dump these running backs for anything quote unquote young?
Yeah, because you know me, I'm not especially smart. I have a simple theory. I just want impact players.
You're
right?
Selling yourself short, but yeah, I get you.
I just want top 6 at every position. It sounds like a simple concept, right? It's not that complicated, but somehow we make it more complicated than that when we play Dynasty football. Somehow we talk ourselves into trading, Julio Jones at the age of 28 for a bunch of nickels and socks, and then wonder why our teams are average. I don't want average. I want to be really good or really bad. I can't get better from average. I can get stuck in the middle for the rest of my life, but I can get a lot better from bad. So again, yeah, I'm fine with riding certain guys into the sunset and letting them die on my roster. And I trade for guys that typically I usually swing for the fences moves. I don't make a lot of small trades because those don't do anything for my roster, to be quite honest with you. When I'm bored, fine. But when I make trades, I'm swinging for the fences. I'm absolutely swinging. The board trades. It's like, I got nothing to do today. I'll send out 60 offers. It's window dressing. But, like you said, I want a guy that's going to make an impact, and it's going to be a Derrick Henry every day of the week over a Cortland Sutton. Derrick Henry is the guy that's going to win you your league. Aaron Jones is the guy that's going to win you your league. Alvin Kamara is the guy that's going to win you your league. Christian McCaffrey, even Ezekiel Elliott, who I can't stand. But you know what? I'd buy him right now based off what the community thinks of him, because these are guys that can be top 4 or 5 running backs. And to me, that's much more valuable than a top 15 wide receiver.
Yep. Yeah, the definition of bored is like you start researching a player for an article and you're like, I'm going to go buy some. Like I went on a Jacoby Myers buying spree the other day. And that's just a random receiver. And I had to make sure it's like, okay, can I start like 8 receivers in this league? That's really the only place I want to buy him. You buying Jacoby Myers in a start 9 where you can start 2 receivers in a flex. I'm like this is just filling at the back of my roster and never going to use them. So yeah, you have to be careful, but yeah, that's the definition of like a board trade where I'm like, oh, let's see. I'll spam 30 Jacoby Myers deals and see how many I can get. And then I get 2 and then I feel accomplished for the day. That's when you get into junkie status with that. So good place to end it.
That though is you don't need more than that. So it's good. It works out well because you only get a couple. Because you don't make offers that are so good for players like that you're going to get them. You know what I mean? Get the player. It's kind of like you're like, let's just see. So you don't end up with 75 Jacoby Myers shares. No,
yeah. They're always like, like the offers I'm sending out were like in a Devy league. I'm sending like a 4th rounder and like Sam Ellinger just because I had Sam Ellinger in, 2 years ago in Devy, and I look at him on my roster. I'm like, yeah, he's going to be like a 6th round pick, and I'm going to want to cut this guy all summer because he's never going to make it. Just like last year with Jake Fromm, like. Once you see where he's drafted, it's like, okay, do I cut him? I've held him for 3 years in the Devy League, but really he should be cut. If he was not Jake Fromm that I held in the Devy League, I would have never picked him up in the first place. So really you should cut him. So if you can make deals like that and just throw a player out and get somebody else that you like, but that truly is the definition of I'm sitting at home during the day and I'm bored. And I just spam out trades on a random player. But anyway, good place to end it. This was a good show. We turned it into almost an hour. They got a little makeup, Manic and Chill, from not having a show in 10 days. They got an extra 40 minutes tonight. So congrats to everybody.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't our fault. Addison Hayes, you can write to him. It was actually his fault. That's who I'm blaming.
Yeah, shout out to Addison Hayes. Great guy. Makes Manic and Chill go behind the scenes. Shane and I are clueless about how this goes from us recording it here to YouTube.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
basically think
somebody
it's
behind the scenes is doing all that stuff. So thanks to them.
dark magic to me. I don't understand any of it. All right.
You
Where can
definitely
people
don't.
find you?
It's right there on the screen at Charles Chill FFB Dynasty and Chill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Everyone that listens to this probably already knows where to find me, but yeah, hit up my Twitter. There's a link there. Join our Patreon. Shane's in there. It's basically everybody from Shane's Patreon too. It's about 50% overlap, so get to know some interesting characters in there. How about you, Shane?
On the Twitters. Hit subscribe on the YouTubes. DLF. We have a large readership base. We need to improve this YouTube base. It needs to get bigger. And if you want us to do anything a little different, feel free to send us comments. I'm a narcissist, so I read all the comments that you find folks leave, even the ones when you give me a thumbs down. It's okay. It's okay. That's fine. Or you tell me that I'm sleepy. That's fine too. Just give us some comments, any feedback, anything you want us to talk about, just let us know. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, and I have to say, I saw those comments, and you are definitely not sleepy tonight. You were in rare Shane form, so I love it. I love it. Let's keep with this. Maybe we'll have a show. It's a little aggressive to have a show on March 17th, 18th, 19th. That's going to be like news breaking every 5 minutes, but maybe we'll try. Maybe we'll just get on here and ramble and turn it into like a 2-hour free agency marathon.
All right, let's not get crazy now.
All right. Cool. Subscribe. Check our Twitters out. Check out DLF. Check out Tyler Karp's articles. He writes one every single day. Great writer, great addition. Yeah, got to give him a shout out.
Love Tyler, man. That guy is
grinder.
I'm not sure he's human.
Sure. Yeah. I know.
Definition of a grinder.
But check it out, DLF. Absolutely. Cool. Well, we're signing off. We went over almost an hour and 2 minutes, so we're done. Later, DLF.